So, you're probably wondering how we got here.
Hello?
Hey, so I just ordered this new trick that looks really cool. Do you want to come over and check it out?
That sounds great. I'll head right over.
All right, I'm going to run my thumb down the edge of the deck. I want you to call out stop anytime.
Stop.
Right there? Okay. Go ahead and take out that card for me. Take a look at it and remember what it is.
All right.
All right? Now, I want you to put the card back into the deck, face up, just like the rest of the cards.
Okay.
That's perfect. So now you ended up with the King of Clubs. Now, you could have had any card out of this whole deck, but you got the King. So at this point, it wouldn't be very impressive if I were to go through and find your card because, well, I've already seen it. So we're going to make it stand out from the rest of the deck in a different way. Watch. Just like that. It's already started to happen. See now, if we spread through the cards, you can see that there's only one card that still has its back in the middle of the whole deck. But if all we did was the backs, well, I don't think that would really be enough. So watch. Once more, just like that. And now if we spread through one last time, you can see that the only card left in the whole deck is your King of Clubs.
That was kind of cool. Why is this called Frost?
Okay, so Blizzard, Snowblind, it's no new concept to give blank deck effects a snow-themed name reminiscent of a wintry whiteout. And that's what Frost is claiming to improve on here. But when you walk outside in the morning and you realize you need to scrape off your windshield, you remember that frost is just the annoying reminder of actual snowfall. So does the name of this trick give us the perfect metaphor, or is it actually something special?
The concept of frost is that a deck is shown to be normal, both front and back, and then changed to be blank on the backs and then the faces. In the routine shown in the trailer, a card is selected and then returned to a face-up spread. Then, once the cards are squared up and turned over, it's revealed that the backs have all been blanked. Then, as you turn the cards back over to do a face-up spread, all the faces of the cards have also been blanked, all except for the selection.
But in order to really evaluate Frost, we have to take a look and see what, if any, other similar effects exist out there and how Frost stacks up against them. Now, the closest thing structurally that we've found is Snowblind by Patrick Kuhn, which also returns the selection to the deck and then blanks all of the other cards around it visually. Both tricks have the same basic outcome, relying on a visual pop rather than a deep psychological effect to drive the trick home. But the big difference is that Frost is gaffed to hell and back, which does make it a lot easier to perform out of the box. On the other hand, Snowblind is very sleight of hand intensive, which makes it more difficult, but it also allows you to end on it if you want to.
Some might be tempted to compare Frost to Blizzard by Dean Dill, or even the partially forgotten Hummer deck by Aaron DeLong. But while these tricks are similar to Frost in that they're blank deck effects, those two do rely on an implicit prediction. In the effects just mentioned, a spectator names a card, and then all of the cards aside from the selection are shown to be blank. This fuels the idea that the magician must have known what the spectator was going to name. But that's impossible. But they must have known. But they couldn't have known. but they must have. We don't get the same sort of mind-bending recursion with Frost, since it's just changing the deck around an already chosen selection. In fact, you could say that both the blanking of the decks in Frost and Snowblind aren't particularly motivated, it's just there because it looks cool.
So if not all blank deck effects are just neatly comparable, then where do we start to look? Well, if we think about Frost as more of a general deck transformation than specifically a blank deck effect, we can start to draw some parallels with other GAF decks like Svengali or Knockout. Rather than blanking the entire deck around a selection, those decks allow you to ostensibly transform the whole deck to match a spectator's chosen card. And in some ways, those tricks have the advantages of both the visual and the predictive effects that we just discussed, in that they produce a striking change, but one that you presumably had no way of anticipating.
But that's not quite the bottom of this Pandora's box, because there's another type of deck transformation, the color-changing deck. You might argue that Frost is as much a color-changing deck as anything. It just happens to blank all of the cards instead of changing them to a different color. The Marlowe color-changing deck, the Regal color-changing deck, and Blurred by Dave Forrest all involve the back of a spectator's card changing color and the back of the rest of the deck changing color independently from one another. In that sense, they share this sort of 1-2 punch structure that Frost has. However, Frost, being gaffed, is absolutely more visual and easier to perform. However, its plot still lacks in that Frost doesn't really do anything to the selection itself.
So what have we learned? Well, Frost is a fast full deck transformation that stands out in some ways, but doesn't have a ton of inherent motivation. And it has stiff, established competition. Snowblind offers a visual transformation that's driven by sleight of hand and does end cleaner. Implicit prediction effects like Blizzard offer a lot more motivation, but they're not really deck transformations at heart in quite the same way. Decks like the Svengali give you a striking visual change along with the amazement of matching a spectator's selection. And color-changing deck effects like David Regal's use ironclad plot structures that build on themselves and end with a great visual payoff.
So what do you get when you buy Frost? Well, the tutorial wastes little time getting us into how to perform the trailer effect, and we've got to give him props there. After a quick run through of some of the gaff cards you receive, we go right into how to perform the core effect, and then afterwards, how to perform a slightless version of the effect that seems a little shoehorned in just so that they can make the tenuous claim that the effect is self-working.
We also get to hear some theories about how the gaff cards included with Frost can be used in other types of effects. And honestly, it is nice to see these guys encouraging end-user creativity, even if the result is a little lackluster.
In lieu of ad cards, as the other brothers are quick to point out, Frost comes with a couple of special gaff cards that are used for a gradual card blanking routine that is touted as perfect for camera. That's a little half-hearted, since one could argue that the Frost core effect works just as well on camera.
After a quick run-through of a deck switch you can use in a strolling environment to swap out the Frost deck for a regular deck of cards, the tutorial delivers pretty much exactly what you'd expect from a solid routine. Or does it?
Especially in this era of visual magic, you should stop and ask yourself whether you want to perform an effect because it looks cool or because you think your audience will appreciate it. And there's nothing wrong with blanking both the fronts and backs of the deck, but will your spectator really get as much of a kick out of it as you? And even if they do, is it worth the price and effort?
If you're like us and think that spectators aren't going to really care all that much about the backs blanking as well, then you have a lot of alternatives to Frost that we discussed earlier.
You might think these alternate approaches have too many trade-offs from what Frost offers, but we actually think it might be the other way around. For example, the tutorial for Frost suggests an opening sequence where you have a printed deck of cards, it blanks itself, and then reprints itself. But if you wanted to do that, why not just start with the blank deck and have it print itself? An effect you can do with just a single blank card that plays just as strong, is just as visual, and a hell of a lot cheaper.
Man, all this talk about Frost. You want to go hang out in the sun?
Yeah, let's go. It's perfect. Now I know we're jumping off the slippery slope here by suggesting alternate tricks to perform instead of Frost. It's just that Frost really rubbed us the wrong way when it came to how it's marketed. and what we got, especially given that Frost touts itself as having an instant reset and self-working.
So is this really self-working? Well, there are quite a few things for you to keep track of and for you to do as the performer in order to accomplish the main effect here. And if you want to live up to the marketing material's crazy visual statement, you will definitely want to perform some sleights. The only truly self-working thing here is the lukewarm, sleightless version that wasn't demonstrated in the trailer and that you will never use.
And that brings us to instant reset, which is just categorically false. Look, Frost has a very fast reset. You're going to have no issue resetting this effect between tables and groups in a walk-around show. But a fast reset isn't the same as an instant reset. An instant reset is a phrase reserved for effects that, as a part of the execution of the effect, reset themselves. And that's just not what Frost does.
It's unclear why these words specifically were used to describe Frost, beyond carelessness or maybe as a roundabout way to justify the $40 price tag, especially given that all the other effects that we've mentioned here today top out at $35 at most. Now, it would have been okay for Abstract Effects to market this as easy to perform with a quick reset, but that's not what happened. Instead, calling this self-working with an instant reset just made the reality more disappointing.
What's more, the marketing material doesn't mention that these cards aren't your standard rider backs or even mandolin backs. They're maiden backs. And while your spectators almost certainly aren't going to be able to tell given the nature of the gaff deck, it still would have been nice to know that before making the purchase. When we opened the box, that omission set the tone for something that doesn't quite live up to the hype.
And if that's what you're looking for, then Frost may be worth a shot. As for us, we'll stick the summer.